Hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel, 70 years of EU integration. So every year, the May 9 is known and celebrated as the Europe Day. Of course, it's a significant day where Schuman Declaration is mentioned, and the main idea behind the EU have been highlighted. Of course, EU is a success story. It is a solidarity and unity for Europe, which brought prosperity and peace for a long time. So, of course, it started with a smaller ideas and expanded. And with 6 countries, it is nowadays 27 countries. So, of course, this project is significant for member countries, for candidates, and it has a clear vision. Over the time of years, has overcome several challenges, including the economic difficulties, pandemics, and for each crisis, the EU is getting stronger and with new participants. So today, we're gonna, first of all, celebrate the Europe Day. Then we will discuss Turkey's, as a candidate country, the path in the EU process. And of course, there are certain problems, there are certain opportunities for Turkey we have to also take into account. So Turkey signed the Ankara Agreement in 1963, and Turkey's EU process started. But Turkey's relation with Europe has much stronger, much deeper background. So in 1996, Turkey joined the customs union and became a candidate status with 1999. So today we will talk about this renewed positive momentum which came late 2020 after years of decline in Turkish-EU relations. There is a new positive momentum. There is high-level visits and new agenda for Turkey-EU cooperation. So today we will discuss both the background of Turkey-EU relations, Turkey's candidacy status, and Turkey's positive and negative momentum in the last couple of years. So we have very important speakers today. Our first speaker and keynote speaker today is His Excellency Ambassador Mehmet Kemal Bozay, who is the Turkey's ambassador to EU. So he will have a introduction talk and keynote speech. Then we will take a couple of questions and we will get into our regular panel. So His Excellency Ambassador, it's a great honor and pleasure to have you, and please, the floor is yours now.
Distinguished coordinator, pleasure is mine, and I am honored to be part of this timely occasion. I also salute from here all the panelists and participants. I'll make a generic introduction about the enlargement. Enlargement has always been the most valuable among all EU policies. It has been one of the main sources of the EU power and contributed EU's role as a regional and global power. It's also a strong driver for reforms and welfare transformation for candidate countries. We consider enlargement as the key for what the EU stands for today, but also as an important factor for how the Union will define itself in the future. The debate about Turkey's EU membership is in essence a debate about the future of Europe in terms of identity, economy, and its political and institutional structure, as well as its potential role in our complex international system. Since Ankara Agreement of 1963, accession to the EU has always been a strategic foreign policy objective for all Turkish governments, and it continues to be so today. Turkey believes that accession process should be credible, sustainable, fair, and where necessary, flexible. It should be credible, which means the rules must not be changed during the game. The EU should honor its own commitments. Today, the Turkish people still overwhelmingly believe in the EU project, but a vast majority do not trust the EU due to the double standards and discriminative actions against Turkey. Turkish people's viewpoint is not baseless, since Turkey's accession negotiations have been blocked by certain countries since its commencement. We believe that hijacking or abusing the EU platform under membership solidarity and veto against Turkey is not a sincere way for solving bilateral problems. Decoupling bilateral problems from main elements of Turkey-EU relations and liberating technical issues from political debates may help us move forward. The accession process should be sustainable. I mean, political blockages must not hinder the process. Final political decision on whether a candidate country is fit for membership should be taken at the very end of the process. Sustainability of the accession process will also provide sustainability of the reforms. Turkey is being criticized by the EU mostly in the areas of freedoms, judiciary, and rule of law. Ironically, relevant chapters 23 and 24 are being blocked. The accession process should be fair, which means all candidate countries should be treated on equal footing. At this point, it is crucial to underline that we have been witnessing with dismay the efforts towards the artificial division of the enlargement package as Turkey and the Western Balkans. The accession process should be flexible, which means countries should be evaluated according to the challenges they face, but also according to the contributions they made to the EU. Against backdrop, it's important to underline that the backbone of our relations with the EU is the accession process. Despite the negative trend that we have been encountering in the Turkey-EU relations for the last couple of years, we intend to enhance our relations with the EU and create a momentum in our accession process. However, this is a two-way street, as it is defined by one of the prominent EU experts, Gerald Knaus. Unfortunately, the EU's accession policy is now in a coma. The longer countries negotiate, the less influence the EU has, the more bilateral vetoes, the clearer that the process is not meritocratic. Nevertheless, with goodwill, empathy, tolerance, and mutual support, we can leave behind the difficult period and enhance a joint vision to encounter the common challenges lying ahead of us. After last December and March European Councils, we have a window of opportunity for a positive agenda, as you mentioned, distinguished coordinator, that will benefit both sides. We have to seize this opportunity by renewing 18 March statements, starting customs modernization, visa liberalization, revitalizing high-level dialogues and summits. In the meantime, as a candidate country, we are moving forward in our ongoing reform agenda. After this relatively generic introduction, I would like to talk about the current situation in Turkey-EU relations. Since the last European Council summit of 25th March, the EU-Turkey relations have been set on a relatively positive track. Now we are awaiting the next summit in June. Our expectation is that following the summit in June, both sides would refresh their relations on the basis of a positive agenda that was put forward by the summit. As it was mentioned in the 25th March summit, the positive agenda is expected to cover solving existing problems of customs union and starting negotiations on the updating of customs union. It also involves high-level dialogues on issues such as health, climate, and counterterrorism, and continuation of migration management, which includes 18 March deal, One for One and Fund for Syrians in Turkey are part of it. Also, immediate issues related to Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus problem are now put in right track. We have already had two exploratory talks, first on 26th January and second on the 16th March with Greece, on the matters covering Aegean Sea and Eastern Mediterranean. We hope that this will not be interrupted by the provocations of Greece and all Greek Cypriots. The 5+ UN informal meeting aiming at exploring whether there is a common ground to move forward on Cyprus issue was held in Geneva on 27-28 April. Where we are now, although Turkey's vocation has always been towards Europe, its relations with the EU has passed through different stages. I would like to elaborate on that. EU's enlargement policy has traditionally been based on forcing candidate countries to adopt EU's paradigm. That paradigm has been modeled on Western European interests and values that have been also reflected in the transatlantic relations. According to this model, the EU's evaluation designed to check the candidate country's progress has in fact always been in such a way that it has monitored whether or not that candidate country has adopted EU's paradigm. I'm not using the word of EU acquis here on purpose. This is a wider concept. It is more strategical and it is more determining. This applied almost all recent enlargements. It was also applied to Turkey's accession process until recently. However, the problem about Turkey was that it was too big, too strong, and geopolitically too diverse to fit in this paradigm I just mentioned as a strategical one. As a result, Turkey gradually began to stretch out of this costume as from almost mid-2010. This self-realization of Turkey is the reason of almost all of the current problems that we are facing with the EU now. Despite this fact, Turkey still is and wants to remain in Europe. Its EU vocation is not lost. And in a global shift of power from west to east, that is the biggest assets that the EU could ever have. To eliminate this paradox, the EU has to discover a new way of keeping Turkey at bay, which would also gradually let it in as a member. To be able to do this, the EU has to accept that its relations with Turkey shouldn't be similar to rule maker and rule taker. It should be eye-leveled, and also the playground should be leveled in Turkey-EU relations. I mean, it must build a level playing field with Turkey. It must transform Turkey while at the same time being transformed by the new realities of Turkey. That is the only way the EU can cope with the global shifting of power. That is the only way to balance the growing influence of other powers by having Turkey on the same side in foreign policy issues and economic policies. How can we do this? First, for the last couple of years, our bilateral relations have been built on three pillars: confrontation, containment, and cooperation. During this time, unfortunately, confrontation and containment have prevailed over cooperation. We need to change this dynamic urgently. It is equally detrimental for both sides if our interaction primarily focuses on matters outside the core EU-Turkey relationship. It's time to put it back on track. With the deep global shifts looming, we both need to re-engage strongly. Our president has repeatedly emphasized that as Turkey, we see ourselves in Europe. We see that our future is connected with that of the EU. This is the case irrespective of the current political conflicts that we are having with some member states. To keep Europe prosperous, strong and safe in a multipolar world of competing powers, EU needs Turkey as much as Turkey needs the EU. Climate change, mass migration, cyber attacks, COVID-19 pandemic, and other recent calamities have also been reminders of EU's vulnerabilities. We need to struggle with these vulnerabilities and make our positions strengthened together. In this sense, we fully support EU's strategic thinking and concrete steps it has taken on issues of Green Deal, digital agenda, and research and innovation. We would like to be part of this transformation side by side with the EU. If we cannot coordinate these matters now, tomorrow may be too late for both. All these areas have also a direct impact on our current and future trade relations. Any EU legislation related to Green Deal, green transformation, will resonate in our customs union relationship. That is why we need to think and act beyond the current atmosphere of confrontation and containment, and we should transform it to cooperation. Customs union, updating of customs union must be seen different than any other issue. It shouldn't be taken as part of a day-to-day political problems. Usually, conditionality shouldn't be applied for this updating. It goes well beyond and deeper than this sort of short-sighted approaches. Turkey and the EU are each other's main trade partners, and it must remain so for the benefit of both. If we don't move on this front now, both of us will be hurt badly in the medium and long run. In the end, Association Agreement of 1963 and Customs Union of 1995 are important and very crucial legal bonds connecting us. But Customs Union is outdated and fails to answer the contemporary challenges of the ever-shifting global balances. Urgent upgrade is not a choice, but a necessity. Huge global changes are on the way and challenges are looming. If we count these challenges, rising Asia-Pacific, tendency to abandon rules-based trade system, degradation of environment and global warming, delivering of Green Deal and managing its impact on trade, challenges in keeping the upper hand on regulatory issues, digital agenda and its reflections on trade and economy, COVID-19 pandemic and its various trade reflections, security of sensitive raw materials, supply chain problems and balanced diversification of it, EU seeking of sovereign autonomy in the age of slippery geopolitical ground, pacing up global competitors in research and innovation, updating of WTO rules for future global liberal rules-based trade relations. At the end of the day, as a candidate country, Turkey is connected to EU and Turkey-EU relations strategically connected with these global changes I just cited. Turkey is in Europe and will remain in Europe due to the harmonized standards in all fields. To have multidimensional relations with other global powers and to be placed in Europe is not mutually exclusive. And, you know, our president issued a message on the occasion of Europe Day yesterday and confirmed Turkey's decisive attitude to join the EU once again, despite double standards and obstacles. I would like to underline here, he also criticized Brussels for not inviting the candidate countries to the conference on the future of Europe. Notwithstanding, when we also look at the Turkish people's perspective on the EU, we see that overwhelming majority of the population supports membership to the bloc and believes that the country has the potential to be a full member. No political hurdle can change this except Turkey is isolated from the EU's agendas on these issues. Therefore, EU has got to think broadly and move towards a more ambiguous scheme to expand and enhance trade and economic ties with Turkey. And on one option is a more ambitious, scheme. One option is that EU agrees to negotiate, but makes the signing of conditional upon Turkey's meeting of other expectations. If things evolve in this direction, you will see that practical and sustainable solutions to current political problems will be more easily found on the way. But if we don't move at all, problems tend to get bigger and bigger. The EU takes this stance for upholding EU solidarity. Solidarity is surely necessary and valuable political tool. However, we must acknowledge that there is a serious problem if and when the EU considers the solidarity as above international law. Cyprus issue is one of the main issues that in our relations with EU. The informal 5+ UN meeting was held in Geneva on 26-27 April. In fact, such a meeting was our minister's idea in 2019. The meeting saw the existence of a common ground for a possible and meaningful negotiations. In the meeting, parties presented their point of view on how they see a possible solution. For us, it is clear federal solutions under the UN auspices have failed for the last 52 years. We have to be realistic. Two-state solution must be discussed seriously. There are more gains for all. In the last round of negotiations that ended up with failure in Crans-Montana, the EU was there as a witness. In Crans-Montana talks, the talks have failed because Greek Cypriots didn't want to share political power and natural resources of the island. There are two peoples, two democracies, and two states on the island. One of the two peoples do not want to live with the other as equals within a federation. A federal settlement would not provide either side with additional advantages more than what they have now. There is no overarching need and interdependence to induce the two sides to go into a partnership. In the presidential elections, the Turkish Cypriot people voted for Mr. Ersin Tatar, Excellency Ersin Tatar, who advocates two-state settlement. This democratic will and decision of the Turkish Cypriot people should be respected. The UN Security Resolutions drawing a bizonal, bicommunal model federation cannot dictate a settlement against the will of the people. Currently, there is no common vision between the two sides on the island. Finally, it was decided in the EU plus UN meeting in Geneva that the second round would be organized in a couple of months' time. We are ready to attend also the second round to express our opinions. And there are other areas of mutual cooperation. We see that our future is destined with that of the EU. This is the case irrespective of the current political issues that we are having with some member states. Such thorny issues can only be defined as seasonal when we consider the depth and breadth of our common interests and mutual dependence. It is also imperative for the EU to take Turkey on board when it gradually defines its sovereign autonomy in a multipolar world of competing powers. This is why sometimes we need to sit back and focus on long-term strategic interests rather than day-to-day political debates. We are following closely EU strategic thinking and concrete steps on issues mainly of Green Deal, digital agenda, and research and innovation. We strongly feel that we must be part of these transformations. If we cannot coordinate our actions on these issues now, as I mentioned for political issues, tomorrow might be too late. To start with, all these areas have a direct impact on our current and future trade relations. For instance, any EU legislation related to Green Deal will resonate in our customs union relationship. To improve EU-Turkey relations, the last high-level rapprochements have given the kickstart. In reality, for some years, we have lost almost all contacts with the EU. In parallel with the high-level rapprochement, we must redevelop a common working culture at the technical level. That's why we must re-engage on issues of common concern. We can make informal list of areas that we can improve our technical relations, where we can develop common working culture in areas of common concern. If it works, it will also feed the high-level political dialogue. Our expectation from the June Council Summit is the full authorization of the Commission to proceed on negotiations for all areas I underlined during my presentation. Thanks for your patience. I would like to stop my opening statement here and again congratulate SETA for this timely occasion. Thanks.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Ambassador. You give a very comprehensive view indeed. I mean, you mentioned both opportunities, the necessities of the time, as well as some of the key obstacles for Turkey-EU relations improvement. And as far as I, a couple of things are for me. I think since the panel is also about the concrete steps, and your highlight on a couple of things were very important, especially the Green Deal, digital transformation, and cooperation in science technology agenda. And of course, unfortunately, since Turkey's accession process is on hold, there is no concrete steps in these fields. So what is your view? I mean, can there be any more concrete efforts or models to initiate new cooperation in these areas? I mean, what is blocking this? I mean, is the political agenda keeping these, or are there any possible working models that can be initiated in these areas? Because when we talk about the positive agenda, Turkish people also doesn't see anything. I mean, since the last summer, Turkish people are hearing about the positive agenda, but they really don't hear much about, and they don't see the concrete reflections of this positive agenda. And the three major points you highlighted are likely to be worked despite some political differences. So what possible models can be applied or can be used to strengthen ties, especially the relatively less risky areas in terms of politics?
Thank you. You know, as I mentioned, that there were summits, and then 25th of March summit was giving some insights about what could be done. And then the visit of President von der Leyen and President Michel was an important step. And the statement of President von der Leyen after the visit was including cooperation in all these very, important areas of priorities: Green Deal, digitalization, and to have some projects. And, these high-level visits, they are icebreakers. And then to create some confidence, after that, we need to work on technical matters. And for that, we see some approach from the EU. Because at technical level, we are working on, especially on trade issues, on climate issues, on health issues. Health issue is also an important concern for all of us after this pandemic. Because about vaccination, about health conditions, and there is a technical approach to us. And as I underlined, and as you were also saying, that we are talking about positive agenda now, it's time to act, because we talked enough for that. And our expectations from June summit is to have this authorization to give mandate to the Commission to work on. Already something is on the ground. We're working together with our colleagues in the EU to see what will be the framework of that kind of a cooperation. And also, if we start customs union talks today, it might take some years. And then the political issues should not hinder and should not hijack this technical work. We can start this technical work. We can do this separating from political issues, and there is no harm there. And, there are some conditions, reversibility and other things. This is also valid for us. And for me, it is a bit contradictory, while there are talks on Cyprus, to make it a condition to say to start with the customs union with this conditionality. Conditionality should not prevent us to have, as you put it very rightly, it shouldn't prevent us to work on what will be the concrete steps. And once we define these concrete steps, this is why our expectation from the EU summit to give this mandate, including the modernization of customs union, to the Commission, so we work on. And also about, other issues, we can work together. There are some also comments about Turkey's approach to climate issue. Our president made very clear statements about Turkey's potential on renewables, how we transfer our sectors, electricity sector, to renewables, and we are there. It is not we signed the Paris agreement, Paris Treaty, but we didn't ratify it. But we are doing our best to also handle the confront the challenges of climate issues. And for health, we are really working hard on many issues. There are priorities of Commission. Let me say one of them, cancer. It is one of the priorities of the Commission, and the cancer treatment in Turkey is so high. Our professors are going to the Balkans and some other countries for brain surgery related with brain tumors. And then our health system and our private and public hospitals, they have the experience on health issues. And also for Green Deal, green transformation, we are ready to work on all these projects. But as I told you, we shouldn't be alienated from these projects and artificial separations like Western Balkans and Turkey. Turkey is a Balkan country at all, and then we are there. And to make some projects together is possible with the EU in this part of the EU, European Union, Europe. And then as a Balkan country, as connections with the people there, Turkey will be a very valuable, a precious asset in the efforts of EU for their engagement with the Union. So there are also some other political issues that we can get together and work together as well. I'll stop here. I don't want to take much of your time. And if there will be other questions, I'm ready to respond them.
Okay, so we are also taking questions from social media, and there's followers. There's a question, this is probably our final question too, but there are certain reports about Turkey. Some of them are quite critical. For instance, Rapporteur Nacho Sanchez report said that there are really, tough criticism here. And one key issue was they expect Turkey to be, more committed and more sincere. So, do you agree on this criticism? And even if we accept, I mean, what steps Turkey do you think will take in the coming weeks to show this?
There are certain areas we're working on that, and then we need to underline that there was a coup attempt, and it has been several years, but still there are remnants. And then after that, immediately we started to have our action plans on human rights, and we are working on other issues. And here also at the beginning of my speech, I also underlined it. The area to discuss the main forum to discuss these things are chapter 23 and 24, and we should fix and then we should work on those things. But blocking them and then criticizing Turkey is not fair. In any case, we are not doing these reforms or other things because of being European member of European Union or to start the accession process. We are doing for our own selves and ourselves, and then we work on these things. And the reports, usually parliamentary reports, like a patchwork. When you read the proposals, amendments, you will be so surprised. You will see that it is from various issues, from various ideas, and then you see so many interruptions to the main content of the report. And in that sense, there are criticisms. We take the ones which are also we are working on seriously, but we don't take the ones just to bash Turkey and corner. And in that sense, we are open to criticisms. Our authorities are open to criticisms because Turkey is also trying to have better standards for our own people. And also we are working very sincerely on that. We would like to also cooperate with the European Union. We sometimes share information on all these issues. And I take serious criticisms of the report on board, but when you look at the report, it is just a patchwork of bashing Turkey, and then it loses its seriousness, and the thing should be done in this report to put real important issues rather than making a menu of all the issues mainly concentrated on bilateral problems with some member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. So it was great pleasure to have you. So we just actually, after a long time, we just started to talk about the positive agenda. So hopefully in the coming weeks, coming months, we will continue to reflect in more details. Maybe the points you mentioned may take our panels. But thank you for this opening keynote speech. We will now thank you, and we will turn to our main panel, which we will have an opportunity to discuss some of these issues in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We thank Mr. Ambassador, and now we will turn to our main panel. We have three very distinguished panelists, where we will have more opportunities to discuss some of those details, the obstacles and potential improvements in Turkey-EU relations. So our first panelist is Wasylina, founding partner of Trocadéro Forum, which is a Center for Sustainable Diplomacy in France. She's a senior European affairs professional, author and speaker, and former president of International Geostrategic Maritime Observatory. So she has long-term experience in EU affairs. So she has a limited time. So what we're gonna do is she will do her presentations, and we will take a couple of questions, and we will continue our panel after Ellen leaving us. So thank you, Ellen, for joining us, and now it's yours.
Thank you so much, Tala. Thank you, Ambassador, for those opening remarks. I am truly honored to be here today, and I speak today in my personal capacity. I have, over the years, as you say, I'm an EU expert and international affairs expert, and I have been observant, and of course, as you probably know, I've spent most of my career in France. So I am particularly interested in this discussion today, and I wanted to just go back to some of the remarks that His Excellency made and sort of build on them. Now, the customs union is a part and parcel of the accession process, as we know, which is in a 5 or 6 stage process. If you can imagine, and as an adjunct professor, I'd just like to quote something, a book that I used from the OECD in 2009, and I'm quoting, "Imagine that all tariffs were removed worldwide. An OECD study showed that almost 60% of the welfare gains that would result from accrue to South countries. Of these gains, about half would come from liberalization by the North, while the rest would be thanks to the South-South liberalization. The same study also showed that South-South trade is relatively more sensitive to policy barriers, such as tariffs, than other kinds of trade flows." Now, as you know, this relationship between Turkey and EU is long going, but I'd just like to quote some figures, and I know His Excellency did, but I just would like to bring those to the fore. So Turkey is EU's, of course, 6th biggest trade partner, and it represents 3.6% of EU's total trade in goods in the world in 2020. The EU is by far Turkey's #1 import and export partner, as well as the main source of investments. 33.4% of Turkey's imports came from the EU, and 41.3% of the country's exports went to the EU. Total trade in goods between the EU and Turkey in 2020 amounted to 130.4 billion euros. The EU's imports from Turkey were worth 62.6 billion euros and were led by machinery and transport equipment, clothing, as well as agriculture and raw materials. The EU exports from Turkey totaled 69.9 billion, and they were dominated by machinery and transport equipment, chemicals, fuel, and mining products. Two-way trade services between the EU and Turkey in 2019 amounted to 26.5 billion euros, with EU imports and services representing 13.9 billion euros and exports 12.6 billion. Now, those are just numbers just to set the stage, but I also would like to cite some figures. I would like to cite some figures from Doing Business Index, just to give our audience a little bit of idea how Turkey situates itself with other countries. Now, I'm quoting directly from the World Bank Doing Business Index and Business Regulations, and Turkey situates itself 33, just below France, from where I'm speaking with you today, which is at 32. China is just above that at 31, Azerbaijan just below that at 34, Israel 35, Switzerland 36. So Turkey is in a good place. I just want to give some perspectives also to our listeners and our audience today. Now, I'd like to follow up with His Excellency's remarks. As a former director of environment, I really do feel that there is something that we can do with Turkey, that the EU can do with Turkey on climate. His Excellency made a great point about pointing out the Green Deal. Now, as you all know, climate is a very important challenge. Climate change is a very important challenge. And as former director of environment of a French city, I feel this is a basis, and I will be conducting a conference in North Africa in November on the green economy. Now, the green economy should be a new model, should be a new format, should be something that can jumpstart this collaboration with the EU. His Excellency pointed out rightly, digitalization is another one. I'll be joining a panel on higher education in Africa, and there is a big push also for digitalization. So I just would like to, not wanting to be too long, on those two key issues His Excellency pointed out that I feel that there would be room for moving this agenda forward between the EU and Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Especially as we mentioned, those issues like climate challenge are shared issues, and digital transformation again is, shared issues. And of course, there are certain privileges to members, but if we take the logic of the challenge, would it be better to initiate a deeper cooperation, even including the candidates, and not just the candidates, but other, maybe the North Africa may also be part of this. Can there be alternative models, or are we just stick to these, member candidate conditionality? Are there any other alternatives that can be used, especially in these shared agenda items? And what do you think on this?
That's a very good question, Tala. I think it's interesting, the question that and how you pose it. Is there another alternative to how we work together? You mentioned rightly the North African countries, and Turkey is also a part of the Union for the Mediterranean. Is there another format, another place, forum where we can work on these issues? Again, I'm just giving, my own personal opinion, but I really do think that in terms of the EU that has put forward this Green Deal, digitalization, I didn't even mention energy security, Tola, and His Excellency, I'm sure, touched on it as well. Energy security is a big issue for the European Union and for our communities at large. So maybe there's a few things that we can work on in that realm and find some common ground. Education, to my mind, would be one of those. As we know, the changes, and we're going to be doing this platform and discussion on the digitalization and challenges in education that we've seen during this COVID pandemic, which His Excellency also mentioned. Health has become a big issue, certainly as we face challenges from a pandemic. So I feel these are just some suggestions, again, from my own personal experience and my personal understanding that I feel that we could really work together on.
Yes, and also maybe as your expert, and in Turkey we try to understand more deeply, and there are questions with regards, so in reports as well. Turkey should demonstrate commitment and sincerity more clearly. How do you see from that? In terms of Turkish people, there seems to be commitment, and Turkish politicians and some of the key people, including the president, mentions strategic goal. But what do you think can more concrete steps can strengthen this commitment, or how it is seen from the EU? What is expected?
Sure. Sure. So you probably heard it. The ambassador mentioned also strategic autonomy. I beg your pardon. Turkey is a NATO member. Turkey is a security provider for NATO and the larger European Union. In fact, I just did a conference last week, and it's now available on a podcast about the Black Sea, where Turkey is a major actor, one of the principal actors in that Black Sea region, which is in Europe. Correct me if I'm wrong. So there is, these are just suggestions again, you know, energy security. Obviously, we can't have prosperous economies if we don't have security. We can't have economies if we don't have energy security. And then, of course, climate change, if you will notice from the World Economic Forum's major risks, has come up on their level to one of the first risks, in which only since COLA since 2016. So there are several areas, I believe sincerely, not to mention digitalization. There's also, you know, cyber attacks that can prevent, as we saw, the US pipeline is offline today because it was hit by something. So these are really serious issues, and I believe that Turkey is committed and has shown commitment and is a major player. You cannot ignore Turkey in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Ellen, for your contributions. So we will continue
so
our panel, but hoping to have you in our panels.
It's a great pleasure and honor for me. Thank you so much
for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're gonna move to to continue with Emre Gönen, who is a professor of political science at Bilgi University. He's one of the leading figures in European studies in Turkey. He has also experience in Economic Development Foundation for 12 years and held position of Secretary General in that İKV. And also, as we mentioned, he has deep knowledge of more detailed topics. And we would especially expect, so we usually talk about the political issues, Copenhagen criteria, and more strategic vision. But when we look at today's Europe, the discussed focused topics are quite different. So I think from the Turkish side and from the European side, there is mismatch. However, you know, the overall agenda continues. So our expectations from your presentations, as you have a deep background, and also what is expected from Europe, what Turkey expects, and why there is a mismatch. I mean, can they come across in the coming years, and what are the conditions for coming across? So these are, I know these are difficult questions, but
questions are not difficult. The answers are, because as you have said, there is a complementarity between Turkey and the European Union, and if we see it as a democratic bloc, you know, in this part of the world, there is a necessary interpenetration between the European Union and Turkey. This is why for the last 60 and something years, we have been trying to establish a functioning cooperation and partnership that would end up ultimately in the total integration of Turkey within the European Union. And we almost did it by the year 2002, 2003, where Turkey was fulfilling the very famous conditionality of the European Union much better than some other candidates who have been full members, who have become full members since. At that juncture, in 2005 and 6, the European Union countries had cold feet and sabotaged the Turkish integration. And since, I believe, 2008 and 2009, our heavy and very deep-going transforming reform policy has come to an end. It was I must say, blunt break, and so everything went upside down since. And this has been maybe also caused by the external dynamics, especially the war in Syria. Now we have largely forgotten, but usually if everything went quite normally, there would have been a free trade territory and a free trade agreement between Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey. That would be in direct continuation of the big single market. And seen from today, it looks like science fiction, you know, instead. And instead, we have had the terrible nightmare that is still ongoing today. I do not wish to enter into the details of the position of the European Union vis-à-vis the Syrian war, or vis-à-vis the practically massacres committed by the Syrian regime, and the disappearance of the state in Syria. I believe the United States have played a very negative role in in refusing under the presidency of Barack Obama, in refusing to intervene, especially in terms of air raids in Syria. And then this void has been filled in by both Iran and the Russian Federation. So in the Middle East, we have a terrible situation. There is virtually no more Middle East. I mean, the countries have been totally devastated. And the Turkish government has been more or less seen and presented mostly as the protector and the sponsor of some of the movements fighting in the Middle East, especially the Muslim Brotherhood. Whether it is really so, or whether it should have been done with much more precaution, is an open debate. I believe that a country as Turkey cannot be seen as the other, but it has turned that way. I mean, we still have enormous problems with practically all of our neighbors except Azerbaijan, and mostly in the Eastern Mediterranean, the problem remains Cyprus. In 1974, when Turkish armed forces have intervened in Cyprus, it was to stop an ethnic cleansing. And afterwards, practically all the time, the policy of the Turkish authorities have been to establish bi-communal, bi-zonal federation that would be established with the negotiations among interested parties, and that was it. And the Cypriot side, together with Greece, from the very start, wanted to organize an international conference, practically to dilute the problem. This has not given many good results in terms of the Turkish perspective, if I may say so. When we look at what's going on today, the issue of Cyprus has become an issue between Turkey, the United States, and the European Union, not to talk about Russian Federation, who is really the game maker in Cyprus. You know, the Annan plan has been rejected because of the position of the Communist Party in Cyprus, which is still a very, very preponderant political force, gaining 30% of the votes almost at every election. And that was due to the intervention of the Russians. You know, when the economic crisis was there, the Cypriot authorities went to talk with Moscow before going to Brussels, which was to the amazement of Brussels. So now the political situation is in a quagmire, and without giving something in exchange, Turkey does not have any instrument in hand to get further in these negotiations. We have seen what has happened in Crans-Montana, where the Cypriot, Greek Cypriot side did not want any solution, and they have not been reprimanded because it's now a member state, and there is this conditionality, there is this solidarity between member states, so on and so forth. So our position to tell the European Union, okay, let alone our bilateral problems with the member states, we have to have a much more institutional framework to cooperate. It sounds good, but it is not implementable. It is not possible because during the last two European summits, the European Union countries have decided, these are decisions taken, not to open any more chapters and then not to go into the modernization negotiations of the customs union. So we have to have countervailing, if I may say so, decisions taken at the highest level in the European Union in order to go forward, let alone the accession negotiations, which are in a coma, but with the modernization and re-evaluation of the customs union. Our customs union is an old model. Things have immensely changed since, together with globalization, digitalization, whatever, and it needs to be taken into consideration. So the positive agenda we have has practically the only positive part in its name. It's called positive agenda, and it has mostly prevented political leaders to insult each other. I mean, that was the case a year ago, and this is not really possible to have diplomatic, sound diplomatic relations in that framework. So we are in a much better and much more conventional platform of diplomatic relations. But we have seen, I mean, this does not change in a fortnight. This does not change in through 2 or 3 declarations. We have seen with the visit of Ursula von der Leyen, and there has been some problems regarding the protocol. And all of a sudden, the Italian prime minister, who is a very experimented Eurocrat, saying that it's normal because Turkish president does not like women, that kind of things. You know, if we do not really get back from that kind of eruption, our relations will hardly become close to normal. I was looking to find a word, a term for it. Now, what we shall do, we have in hand only the relations. The only relations that work is the situation of the refugees in Turkey, mostly Syrian refugees in Turkey, and practically the cooperation with the European Union on that field works fine. Together with it, we should maybe, well, normalize the discourse in our relations, and it will take time. It will take time. We shall not really be expecting too much without any change in our positions to have all of a sudden a much better relationship, a much better functioning cooperation. I mean, the really hot issue is the customs union modernization. And what the European Union proposed are that if everything goes well, maybe the exploratory works for starting such kind of negotiations could start. So this is the lowest level of diplomatic relations. I hope that common sense will prevail anyhow from both sides, and we will be able at least to take these steps. But otherwise, I really do not think that Cypriot issue can be on the table with the European Union to be negotiated with the UN, with anybody, without really preparing the ground. And there is no ground for such perspective as of now. it has been a little bit a disappointment for all of us, but I myself have been studying the European Union relations of Turkey for 40 years maybe. Just before this panel, I have given a lecture to my students about EU-Turkey relations. But the real thing I can tell about is disappointment. It's a continuous disappointment, but this decade, since 2010 up until today, has been even more disappointing because we really were at an arm's distance from the membership and from full integration. And this is not to the fault of Turkey if it did not materialize. This will be my presentation, if we can talk about the presentation.
Thank you. I mean, we have some questions from our social media accounts. They're asking, how can Turkey and EU iron out, sort out their differences in East Med and in Cyprus issue? Can there be, you know, real positive agenda without sorting out these things, or are we really got stuck with this? Because since this early, you know, accession talks, we got stuck with Cyprus, and now we added on top of it, Eastern Mediterranean. Is there a possibility of a positive agenda without sorting out, or can there be parallel tracks that can move together to address those two?
The problem is that if the European Union decides at the highest level, this is the level of the chiefs of state or government, you know, it requires most of the time a consensus, a unanimity. So there is no European Union as such. It's not the European Commission that decides, you know, it's the plethora of member states who will come to a conclusion, who will come to a consensus and decide about the steps to be taken towards Turkey. And among these people, you have 3 or 4 countries that are inherently very much maximalistically against Turkey. So we have to perhaps reverse the situation, establish more or less normal, conventional, bilateral relations with these countries in order to overcome the institutional blockage at the level of the European Union. It will be very hard to do. How do you going to get in good terms with Greece? I'm not even talking about Greek Cypriot regime. With France, we have gone really to the deepest point of our conflictual situation. I do not know why it has gone so out of hand all of a sudden under the presidency of Emmanuel Macron, but this is a fact. So perhaps better idea would be to sit on the table with countries like Greece and so. And remembering Moravcik, you know, who always told that a candidate country needed a big brother within the European Union to open up perspectives, ultimately to help become member state, whatever. We do not have such person, such country. It does not exist. Only Germany, to some extent, have been preventing the crisis to go out of hand between EU and Turkey, which was a very good thing. Italy was formerly a very positive partner, and you have seen how the Prime Minister Draghi responded to our president. Spain is neutralized, so there is nobody really talking for Turkey within the European Union, and we have to create some how would I say, scenario whereby some countries would be really defending the Turkish cause in such or such field or realm. I do not know. For the Syrian refugees, for instance, we owe to Merkel all her support because she has seen how important was Turkey to stop this human slaughtering and to save the honors and the lives of more than 4 million Syrians. Some of them have gone to Europe, 3.5 million stays in Turkey, and they will stay in Turkey. They don't want to go to Europe. There is no Syria left to go back. So what are we going to do with these people? I mean, we need also the, how would I say, the proficiency of the European countries to accommodate these people, to see what could be our modus vivendi with these people. We need each other more than any time in history. Maybe not the Cold War, beginning of the Cold War, but it looks more problematic because of the very high number of dynamics that are in play. That's all I want to say.
There is also this, digestion capacity issue, which is like, the curtain to Turkey. But and there is no such a actually value in EU unwritten. There are certain unwritten conditions. But to what extent European side is right in terms of being afraid of Turkey's presence? I mean, as you mentioned, you need a big brother, to take care of. But is Turkey too big to be taken care of, or and how can Turkey let Europeans to overcome this fear?
This is new. I mean, Turkey was too big, too populated, too Muslim for the culturalist approach. It was always too much something. And it is a fact that the European Union cannot enlarge indefinitely. To my humble understanding, this is the end of the enlargement. For the Western Balkans, there are seats that are prepared. They may really become members. But this is all. I mean, neither Ukraine nor the Caucasian republics could ever contemplate becoming member states. So where do we stop? I mean, will there be an iron curtain between member states and the others, including Turkey? Or shall we, as European Union, look more intelligently to the situation and find out relays for our way of living, for our way of doing business, commerce, whatever? And this is the essential and vital role to be played by Turkey. I was saying, if there was no war, if Syrian regime was reformable, there would have been a free trade area around the Middle East, and that would have also helped these countries to get in much better terms with Israel. So that's the magic stick of the European Union, and the magic stick can be held in this region only by Turkey. So either there is a perspective that will be understood and implemented by the European in such way, or we will continue our daily disputes with this country or that country, and then the insults will still fly in the air. This is no way of doing business. This is no way of doing diplomacy. And at that time, with the pandemics, we have seen, everybody has seen that trying to totally delocalize the production of things to China can be very detrimental. I mean, there were not enough factories to build up these stupid masks we all wear, so your next of kin, who lives next door, becomes much more important in terms of health, in terms of production, in terms of security. Turkey is not seen by France as an ally. They have been talking about a possible scenario. I don't know how it will turn out, but a possible scenario whereby in a conventional war, Turkey and France would clash. I mean, it has never been happened, not under François Ier, not under the French Revolution, never ever, except the First World War. But that shows you the perception, and this perception has to change, and it takes two to tango. It will require a position change on the part of Turkey, which is taken steps in that sense more and more, which is a good thing. But it requires also a much more open mind on the part of the European Union, which is very hard to come.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Gönen. As
You're welcome.
we speak more, I mean, we see perceptions really matter. I mean, all this transformation is getting on the perceptional level, but it really affects the relationships. So I think a lot needs to be done at the perceptional level as well. Thank you. So now we're going to get into our, we would like to thank you, and we would like to get to our, third speaker in the panel, Özgür Ünal-Eriş. She's a professor at 29 May University, 29 Mayıs University. She's one of the leading experts in EU in Turkey. She had graduate studies at Exeter Essex University, taught previously at Bahçeşehir University. So, of course, we have a bunch of issues, concrete issues, including the illegal migration, political issues, and, democratization process, political conditionality, which are areas of your expertise. So, as our speakers mentioned, there are expectations from both sides. We mentioned Turkey's expectations. We also heard about EU's expectations. So I would also want to hear from you. I mean, what are the expectations? What are the obstacles? And what is the source of this mismatch? I mean, as we talked, the issue of perceptions really matter. However, beyond the perceptions, we definitely have certain concrete issues that needs to be sorted out, but also some potential, potential opportunities. As our president also reiterated yesterday, EU membership is still our strategic priority. So under these commitments, I mean, what are the potential, what are the obstacles, and how can we overcome these, stalemate in Turkey-EU relations?
Thank you very much, Professor Köse. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me today. This is kind of like an extension of the Europe Day celebration that we actually celebrated yesterday. And it was an honor to be here with you to speak on this platform, also with His Excellency and the other very distinguished panelists as well. So the question that you have raised is actually a very important question. And I think it's a very broad thing to answer that, to be honest. This is the question that we have been trying to answer probably for the last 50, 55 years. What are the obstacles which are in front of Turkey's EU membership? Well, I have been also dealing with EU studies for the last 25 years. I first, when I was studying when I was doing my BA actually in Turkey's Boğaziçi University, I was studying political science and international relations, and I wanted to take a course which was dedicated to the European integration, and I couldn't, because although I was studying in one of the most, distinguished universities in Turkey, and in that department, there was not actually one single course that was telling us about how the institutions of the EU function, what are the, theories that try to explain European integration, all these general basic information about the EU. There was only one course, and that was in the economics department, and that was about European economic integration. I think even that start can give you an idea how late we started the process. As on the road to becoming an EU member. Well, Turkey has actually, has had an association agreement since 1963. It applied for full EU membership in 1987. It was declared as a candidate in 1999. And then it started the negotiation process in 2005. And then here I am in late 1990s trying to find a course to study about European integration process. So therefore, this actually shows us that, the road, as Turgut Özal had said when Turkey had first applied for EU membership, the road is very long and it's very much winding. But he was also very optimistic, saying that we will end up as a full EU member as a result. Why didn't we? That's the major problem that we are dealing with. Well, even when we look at the first three, the last three European Council summit results, and also this positive agenda that came as a result of these summits, and especially the conclusions of the last summit, which took place in March 2021, I don't really see these results as being very optimistic, to be honest, because yes, we are talking about a positive agenda. We are talking about a positive environment. We are talking about how Turkey, as a very important country, which is in the neighborhood of the European Union, can actually contribute to the major, strategic autonomy concept of the European Union, to the major potential role of the European Union at the global level. We are still talking about how strategically Turkey can contribute to this role. We should have been past that, we should have been talking about something else. So I don't really look at this positive agenda issue as being a very, very substantially good issue in the relationship between Turkey and the European Union. I think this positive agenda issue is kind of like treating Turkey as a very, very important country, yes, because it's strategically located in a very important place. Of course, it has a very important economic and trade relationship because of the customs union with the European Union. Then there is the refugee issue. So it cannot be really pushed away. But because of the obstacles that we have already been mentioning a little bit, it cannot be taken in as well. So this is like really very, very problematic, obviously, because treating Turkey still as a strategic country, basing the relationship still on the concept of transactions and functions, it's not really good. We are trying to treat the positive agenda as something that is good and advantageous. But when we really reflect upon that, I think we have to say that we should have been in a relationship with the European Union much more based on the concept of norms. This is what enlargement entails, and this is how a candidate country which is negotiating for full membership should be treated, based on norms, values, building a common future together as equals, as part of the family, not as kind of like a country which should be treated well, but not too well to be taken part of the family picture. So I think this is a little bit problematic. And, even actually the positive agenda, it's still also very fragile. Even the positive agenda and the outcomes that it's going to give to Turkey, still it's based on conditions. That if you behave well in the Eastern Mediterranean, we can think about something to prepare Turkey for the modernization of the customs union. If you behave well in these areas, that we can start a high-level dialogue with you. The only thing that is in the positive agenda that is not based on the conditions is actually the people-to-people dialogue. So maybe, first we have to then, from here, we have to then analyze this in two things. Why did this happen? Well, one, there has been a big lack of trust in the both sides, both inside Turkey and also inside the European Union. Why there is a lack of trust towards Turkey inside the European Union? Because Turkey, according from the perspective of the European Union, now I'm speaking, Turkey has been giving certain promises, but they are not implemented. Even the positive time period that the Turkish-EU relationship was going through, which was also mentioned by Professor Gönen, who spoke previously. Even in that period, I remember Günther Verheugen, who was the commissioner responsible for EU enlargement, saying when all these harmonization packages were passing through, saying, okay, we see that you are actually putting everything into legislation. We have to see the implementation. So for the European Union, it's not only easy to speak, it's not only enough to speak, give promises, and even put the acquis communautaire, the EU legislation, into the transform it into Turkish legislation. You have to implement it. You have to show it. You have to really show to the European Union that you have digested all these values and you are actually implementing them. From the perspective of the EU, this is not happening. Then let's look at why there is this lack of trust in Turkey. Well, because I feel, for example, again, look at the period when everything was going well inside Turkey, especially from the perspective and from the framework of the transfer of EU acquis communautaire into the Turkish legislation. Even at that time, we know that there was all this like skepticism coming from the EU public circles, you know, like people were saying, okay, now this is happening. We were not really expecting the Turks to be acting so speedily. What are we going to do if they really become EU members? Austria said, okay, then we can do a referendum. Okay, they can fulfill all the criteria and they can be ready to become an EU member. But if we actually put the referendum into place, then we can still reject it. Then Sarkozy came and he became the president of France and in 2007, and he said, I don't really want Turkey to become an EU member. So this is this actually led to the lack of trust in the Turkish side then. I mean, Turkey, with, you know, like with the combination of the public opinion and politicians, then started to say, even if I complete everything, I'm still not going to become an EU member. Look at the public opinion. Look at some of the, you know, like look at some of the statements of the political leaders. Look at the Cyprus issue. Cyprus actually putting all these blockages over like really important negotiating chapters. So therefore, this actually created a very big lack of trust. And this is what we are trying to do now. We are trying to mend this lack of trust, which we have been accumulating for the last like 10 years, basically. And how can we mend this lack of trust? Well, actually, okay, we are kind of like, let's say, not criticizing, but we are looking at the positive agenda with a little bit of skepticism, because this is not what we want. We don't just want to be a contributing factor to the future of European Union. We want to be in the European Union, in the future of Europe, right? So we are looking at the positive agenda skeptically, but we can actually turn this also into an advantage as well. And because, of course, I'm a political scientist, I have to deal with theories when I'm also dealing with the European integration process. Professor Gönen talked about Moravcik, which I really like. I used Moravcik in my PhD thesis as well. But now I'm going to quote Karl Deutsch, who was writing in 1950s and he was trying to explain the European integration process through transactionalism. And his idea was that all these people who have been fighting hundreds of years, not only in First World War I and World War II, you know, like the Europeans have been fighting hundreds of years in the European history. Now they don't have trust towards each other. They have a lack of trust. How can we build this trust? Through transactions. They will make transactions with each other. They will make certain like economic like economic cooperation, and slowly, cultural exchanges, travels, maybe like student exchanges like the Erasmus program. And maybe slowly they will build up the trust towards each other, and all of them will be in the security community. So therefore, maybe from here we can actually use this opportunity, because we are a country who want to become an EU member. And so European Union is a club. They have the rules. We can't change the rules. They have Copenhagen criteria. We can't say change it, because it's us who want to become a member of the European Union, not the other way around. So if this is what they offer to us, then we have to make best of it in order to improve this trust again, so we can start with the transactions, use customs union as a good way of transaction, and through this customs union we can actually slowly, especially by building exchanges between people like academicians, like students, use public opinion as a good way of public diplomacy, we can actually show the European Union that we are there basically to build up this trust. And also in that way, again, the extension of Karl Deutsch security community is very, very important, because Karl Deutsch, when he was using the concept of transactionalism, he was talking about the security community, and here the migration issue comes into the picture. Another transactional point, because the security community of transactionalism says that if people are all belonging to the same security community, they will help each other because they all want to feel secure. And even if they have disagreements, they will not fight with each other because they are now belonging to the same security community, and they want to prevent the security threats from coming inside them. So far, European Union created itself as a security community. It actually has been seeing migration as a security threat. And in order to prevent migration to spill over into its own security community, we all know that it has been building this partnership with Turkey through the migration deal. And so again, through this migration deal, we can basically say that we all believe in the same kind of security threats. We all want to help people together who are actually running away from a civil war, running away from human rights violations, but we want to do this like together. Again, build up the issue of trust through this method of transaction. But of course, as Turgut Özal said in 1987, it has been more than 30 years now, that he said it, and we are still in this long and winding road. And are we seeing the end of the tunnel? I mean, unfortunately, I can't. And I feel really sorry for that, because I wanted to see the end of the tunnel. But if this is what is offered to us, then we have to make better use of it. And also, I think here, I know it's been it's a little bit long, but before I finish, I also have to maybe mention the concept of the Conference on Future of Europe. I think this is also very important. It's actually started yesterday, and it's going to last till spring 2022. Its main aim is to bring the European public opinion into the picture and let the people tell what they actually want in the future of Europe. Another way of people-to-people contact, just like come into the picture as a candidate country. Also tell the people that you also want to be as a member of like the future of European Union together. Like just basically follow what is actually happening on these platforms. As far as I have been following, the people of the member citizens of the European Union are concerned about what is going to be happening after the pandemic. Like how are the economies going to be revived? How is public healthcare system going to be improved? Then jump into the picture. Talk about making the vaccination process a common project. This is also security threats. Like tell them how the modernization of the customs union can also help to revive their economy as well. There is China, and we know that a lot of people are like looking at China a little bit skeptically, because of political issues, tell them that you're in the neighborhood and you can actually be a part of this process. So slowly, through all these like advantages and transactional issues that can happen in the relationship between Turkey and the European Union, you can build up the trust. And I want to be optimistic for that. And I want that actually to happen as a professor who has been studying in the Turkish-EU relations for the last 25 years. Yes, that was my contribution.
Özgür, I also agree with your transactional approach. I mean, I think for the moment, that's the only viable option that can move forward and build trust. So, of course, we have all our moral commitments and, you know, emotional attachments and lots of things. But when those moral commitments and emotional attachment doesn't bring you to expected outcome, we got disappointed and we moved to the opposite direction. I think this transactional approach and concrete steps in those directions are very important and, you know, needs to be maybe motivated again. But one thing that we teach in our classes that EU is an institution of norms, values, institutions, and procedures. However, if you look at the Turkish-EU relations, we don't see that. Yes, we have normative relations, we have institutional relations. However, we got stuck with our bilateral problems with sometimes with France, sometimes with Greece, sometimes Austria, sometimes with Greece. Unfortunately, all these procedures, all these things we try to teach in our classes does not necessarily apply in Turkish-EU relations. I mean, why Turkish-EU relations is more fragile? I mean, more. I mean, what do you think? I mean, how can we overcome this and bring EU to its normal place in Turkish-EU relations? I mean, or do you think it is not possible under these conditions? Yes, you offer the framework, which I think is useful framework, but on the other hand, from the the ideal definition to practice in Turkish-EU relations, we see a huge gap. So how can we bring this gap closer? I mean, or is it not possible? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I hope it's possible, by the way. Let me just start by hoping that. And Tala, I totally agree with you. I mean, we are actually teaching the European Union to our students that it's a normative power based on universal values. And so this is actually what it's trying to do. It's using its soft power and it's trying to transfer and transmit its norms, like to the whole world actually. And it's trying to use these norms and values in the relationship that it has been creating with the other countries. But when it comes to Turkey, I think this is actually what is happening to the European Union at the moment. It's stuck, and there is this dilemma. Is it really creating its position towards Turkey based on its interests, or is it creating its position based on its values? Is it following a realpolitik, or is it following an ideal politik? Is it looking at Turkey within the framework of realism as a strategic partner, or is it looking at Turkey within the framework of idealism as a negotiating candidate? This is going back and forth, unfortunately. And I'm saying unfortunately because as far as I read this problem in the relationship between Turkey and the European Union, the European Union actually has been looking at Turkey as a much more within the framework of the realpolitik based on its interests. Because the interests, realpolitik, as we all know, it's basically how the country is defining its national interests. And of course, here, the public opinion is very important. When we look at the Eurobarometer results, which reflect upon the thoughts and ideas of the EU member state citizens, we have actually been seeing that the citizens of the EU member states are not only looking at Turkey skeptically, they are looking at the whole enlargement issue skeptically. There's a big enlargement fatigue. They don't want anyone else in the European Union anymore. So in that sense, how can then the politicians who are so much based on the electorate's wishes in the elections, say, okay, but we have been having this relationship with Turkey for the last 60 years, and there is this pacta sunt servanda. We have to follow our obligations, and we have to give them the carrot. They need that. Yes, they can, but it's a chance that they will then be losing the elections, unfortunately. So therefore, if this is the case, if then the European Union is acting much more within the framework of realpolitik, although it should be acting as a normative power in its relationship with Turkey and the European Union, then we have to again, focus on the public diplomacy. We have to focus on the people, this people-to-people contact. This is why it's very, very important. I did my PhD in Britain, yes, but it was on Germany's foreign policy towards Turkey's EU membership. So I was in Berlin talking to the members of the parliament, asking them what they think about Turkey. And most of the time they said, well, for us, it's okay if Turkey is democratized. But I'm sorry, my electorate does not want you. Especially, it was coming from the Greens, it was coming from the Christian Democrats. So they said, okay, we want you. Yes, if you fulfill everything, you are more than welcome to join us. But how am I going to explain to my public, like substantially enough to say that you have really changed? And and this is Germany, the leader of the European Union. Imagine the other countries. Why is this happening, by the way? Of course, I think history is very, very important. I always start my course, Turkey relations, with the relationship between the Ottoman Empire and Europe. I think that's very important. Like we have been always saying that Ottoman Empire is part of Europe and this and that. But unfortunately, we have to be realistic. The relationship between Ottoman Empire and Europe was usually conflictual. It was made on based on wars, basically conflicts, the holy wars, everything. Almost like the whole identity of Europe was based on creating the Ottoman Empire as an other, reflecting the Ottoman Empire as the other side of the mirror. So if we are not trying to let go of this image of Turkey, which is based on so many years of misunderstandings and the other reflections and things like that. So it's very difficult, but of course, it's not, it's not impossible. It can be done because there are very good opportunities that we can create. There is the conference on the future of Europe. There are also all these things that actually Turkish membership can offer to the European Union. But we have to be much more substantial. We have to really be moving quickly and making much more concrete steps rather than just reflecting upon the positive agenda and just saying that that will be enough for us at the moment.
So yeah, unfortunately, positive agenda is important, but doesn't provide a new pathway. So, of course, improving bilateral relations, improving inter-society relations may be a positive direction. But I think keeping the positive agenda without an end game, without a positive outcome, is a weak statement. It is not convincing for Turkey as well. So I think the positive agenda should come with more concrete outcomes. Some of them are mentioned, like modernization of customs union and visa liberalization. But I think if we cannot reach to those at least interim, locations, interim outcomes, even this current positive agenda may even get into more negative sense. So as I said, those relations are quite important, but to move forward with the positive agenda, I think we need to think and work on more concrete things. So that's, of course, as the academics and think tanks, we try to produce some ideas, but I think a lot more needs to be done at the level of society, like you mentioned, in Germany, in other EU member countries, and in Turkey as well. I mean, it is quite difficult to stimulate new movement, new excitement if there is no concrete positive outcome. I think that needs to be. So I see people's changing, in the because politicians, president mentioned positively about EU, there is some kind of change, but I think it's not sustainable if there is no concrete outcome. So we are hopeful, optimistic, but yet cautious because of our earlier experience. So finally, what is your suggestion to Turkey? I mean, we, all the experts, of course, we know that we are critical of EU because of certain, double standards. But as Professor Gönen mentioned, this, I think the public opinion and the image is important. So what do you recommend for Turkey in the short term?
Well, first of all, yes, there have been lots of problems in the relationship between Turkey and the European Union. But most of the time, the public opinion polls, which are done in Turkey, actually show that the people still support the European Union. There was a recent poll which was done by the German Marshall Fund. And there, when it was asked to the people, do you really want to become a member of the European Union? More than half of the people still said, despite everything that has been happening for the last years, which has been also like reaching like really very bad peaks as well, they have been actually saying that yes, they are supporting the Turkey's EU membership. This is good. And also, like when you ask the young people, the people who are between 18 to 24 years, the number even goes up to about 66%. Even more people, even more young people, they want Turkey to become a member of the European Union. So, well, of course, I mean, I have to say that I have been teaching EU politics. My whole career is based on European Union. So, of course, I want Turkey to become a member of the European Union, not just to basically as an extension of my career, obviously, but I think this is what Turkey needs, because in our neighborhood we have the European Union. Look at the European Union. It's not like 100% perfect, of course. We see increasing populism. We see also people being Eurosceptic, right? In the pandemic, they strived a little bit, but then they came up with about 750 billion euros as a recovery fund. What does that show us? I mean, the European Union is still based on universal values. It's still offering people democracy, the protection of human rights, transparency, a good way of living. When you are in need, you can go and, use the funds. So it's good. It's a good club. And I think Turkey needs to be there. We started this process, and it's really this Pacta Sunt Servanda, legally we are connected. And we have to finish it. We have to come to the certain common grounds. We have to talk about what needs to be done openly. And so therefore I see the future of Turkey as a full member in the European Union. Not only I wish it, but I also see it like that as well, if we follow the right steps.
Thank you very much, Professor Eriş, for these good wishes. So now we, roll the ball. So hopefully this will, continue with more, more concrete steps. So, Professor Gönen, what are your final thoughts on how to roll this positive agenda? I mean, what are your suggestions to Turkish side? I mean, we know we are very critical of in Turkey EU double standards, but of course there are things to be done from our side as well. So what are your initial suggestions, recommendations in the short term, at least?
In the short term, Turkey is taking, I believe, the necessary steps, which is very, important. Volte-face in a way, refraining from using any military means for the existing problems, and establishing or trying to establish conventional normal relations with the neighborhood countries, Israel, Egypt, and so on. So it's good, and I do not have very original thoughts about how to mend these relations. I would rather follow Özgür's perspective in establishing a modicum of negotiations. The European Union has been negotiating almost on the same table since 1947. Negotiations are the way of living of this polity, if I may say so. If we do not negotiate, we come up with bright ideas, bilateralism against multilateralism. This is very nice as political discourse, but it will not produce anything. It will not deliver anything. And we have to sit on the table. This is not the kind of table we would wish to see. It's not the negotiations table. The enlargement has been a large disappointment in terms of economy and in terms of politics. Countries that were cherished by the European public opinion, like Poland or Hungary, have turned into real problems and into I wouldn't say rogue states, but very hard to define them as functioning democracies. Whereas the essence of this enlargement was to impregnate stability and democratic functioning on the European continent. It failed. So we have to perhaps something I did not pronounce very easily, but I believe we have gone way away this kind of limitations. Now, every time we have been in my different positions, I have heard from the high-ranking European representatives, we should establish something, it is called a privileged partnership, whatever. And we have rejected this every time. If the European Union really wants to offer something to Turkey, they should start working on it, because they have not even offered a membership of the European Economic Area, which is kind of second division for the European Union functioning. So if there is a real will to, as it was said in time, to anchor Turkey as strongly as possible to Europe, well, come with a tangible offer, whether it is called spatial relations, whether it is called whatever, then we can maybe have a more realistic approach, because Özgür has said it, I do not think that the membership negotiations could be revived or could come to life again, especially not in this conjuncture. There are a variety of other negative issues, but I don't want to talk about it. We are talking about the positive agenda, so let's try to make things positive. The vital step is the modernization of the customs union. We have to focus all our energy and will on that, I believe. And starting from that, maybe there will be a kind of a spillover effect on other dimensions of the European integration and our bilateral relations with the European Union. But Turkey did not pay much for enhancing her image in the decade, the first decade of the 21st century. We did good things, and then our image was polished. Whenever Turkey takes good steps, do interesting things, okay, we do not get all the estimated results, estimated benefit out of it. But our image is totally different in the year 2010 and today. So it's a little bit, you know, kind of inherent in the politics and in the discourses we implement, we use, we profess, whatever. So taking good steps, taking steps towards exporting stability. Turkey is the only country in this region to be able to export stability. And that's our real force, not the military force, but our soft power to really remind people here and elsewhere how Turkey could be a game setter in a way. So this is all I want to say for the time being.
Thank you. I think this is a very, very concrete, actually, thing. I mean, the security. I mean, most Europeans do not recognize, but Turkey's efforts in the fight against the ISIS and some of other, you know, security issues are, I think, understated in European agenda. Some countries see, but I think the continuation of this security relationship still is relevant. And we see these obstacles. I think this new positive momentum is probably the beginning of a new thinking about Turkey-EU relations. Possibly it will not be same as the early years of, you know, candidacy. So probably there will be more practical approach. But I think, but thanks for giving thoughts on this new momentum. I think it will not be similar to the one that's like 2004, 2005, but I think we will eventually find out a new momentum with new terms. So you, the intellectuals, and especially the people who are thinking about EU-Turkey relations are also key to this agenda and dialogue. So I would like to thank all of you, Professor Emre Gönen, Professor Özgür Ünal-Eriş, and also Ellen Wasylina, and also I would like to thank our ambassador for his keynote speech. So we would try to keep this agenda and discussion, and I think the thoughts and ideas are important, and that's all we can do as the academics and think tank people. But I think that will also resonate more, you know, concrete areas as well. So I would like to thank to you and also our followers at social media and also from the, you know, online forums. Thank you.